imagine what it's like to wake up in the morning thinking that this could be the very last day on earth? It must have been what he expected to have happen, and it was going to happen that day. When William Miller came up with his belief about the second coming of Christ, he did it based on prophecies in the Bible that suggested that Christ was coming back sometime between March 21st, 1843 to March 21st, 1844. People sometimes think about the end of the world as a very terrifying thing, and certainly it is. If you're thinking, as William Miller was preaching, that the world is going to burn up and there are going to be cataclysms, and it's a terrifying event. It's the apocalypse. But if you think you're among the faithful and you believe that God has promised to take you to heaven and to be with you forever, then it's a very, very hopeful sign, a hopeful time. Well, March 21st, 1844 would have been a day when the family stayed close together. They'd be sitting here singing Adventist hymns. So if you look around the room here with the people singing and praying, he would have prayed earnestly for the conversion of his children. He would have prayed that the Lord accept his family. He would pray that they had been as faithful as he had been. Of all those religious innovators in the early 19th century, he was the most successful. His movement is so important because it really was a mass movement, not a cult, not a sect, but a mass popular movement.
14, and it says, unto me, unto 2,300 days, and then shall the sanctuary be cleansed.
It took him 13 years to begin preaching because he was afraid of what people would say about him. And he kept having debates with the Lord, who he always heard calling him to go and preach. And he kept saying, well, I can't. I'm too old, and I'm untrained as a preacher. There's no way I can do that. And then finally, he got the impression one day to go and tell it to the world is very strong. The movement grew very slowly in the small towns and villages. There was an explosive growth that produced the mass movement from 1840 until 1844. No one is going to accept Miller's vision if it had been a vision, but if you can see the numbers on a page like this and see the prophecies fulfilled through history, through real history, then it makes Miller's message all the more compelling. If you went to one of these lectures, you would see the fantastic creatures right before your eyes. It was all based on the visions of Daniel and his interpretations of King Nebuchadnezzar's dream. It's almost like our modern fascination with science fiction. The fantasy is exciting and it's alluring, and it also makes the point very graphically that there really is evil in the world. If I were sitting in this room as a member of this family, I would be thinking, I would be listening for the clap of thunder that would begin the process. Some might have expected to hear the trumpet blast. I would hear thunderings and earthquakes, and the sun would be darkened. And then the great act of redemption would begin when people would begin to rise, literally rise into the air. Well, as the sun came up in the east, the one thing that would have struck him is, this is not lightning. It's very quiet. There's no thunder. There are no trumpets. And no earthquakes. It's a still, probably beautiful day. And normally that would be a very hopeful thing. But today it was a shattering experience. Because he expected to see Jesus. On the one hand, he trusted God. And the message that Jesus was coming back was God's promise, and God keeps God's promises. His whole career was an act of faith on his part. So God wasn't a liar. But it didn't happen. Miller was morose, depressed. I mean, he wrote about it. His goal was to tell God how hurt he was without suggesting a lack of faith in any sense of the word. But as a child would say to a father, you disappointed me, you hurt me, and this is how I feel about it. He expected to be with Jesus forever in the air. He expected to be with his parents. He expected his whole family and all his faithful friends to be together now forever, at least for 1,000 years. And then after the resurrection of the unjust, to be in heaven, in paradise. And none of that happened. The hope of the ages did not take place. If you think it's crazy, you lose the magic of the moment. It's not crazy. It's the hope of the ages. It's the Christian dream.